Awesome, thank you. Well, it's been a week. And for many of us, it's been a really tough week. And actually, it's been a culturally very, very challenging year and more. And I know that it was put out that I was going to do a talk on dancing with abundance, and I will do that one of these times, but I did not feel authentic being up here without addressing what has just happened and what is happening in our country. And what's amazing to me is the Soulshine, they didn't know about this change till, I don't know, maybe Friday, and had already chosen to do that song, which was kind of perfect for this talk, right? Let's not let anyone put a wall between us.
We were kind of hoping you would change it.
Okay, all right. I'm going to talk about some difficult topics. I personally believe very much that new thought it's the path for me, for sure. Our thoughts have power. I don't think that that means we have to just be head in the sand and Pollyannish. So that's what I'm going to put forward today. There are likely people in this room and in our online community who voted for Donald Trump. And almost all of us have friends and family who did. It's my hope that we can one day reach a place where those differences of opinion is not the absolute stark divide that it is right now. I think that's probably a ways and some bumpy miles off from now. So I think it's important to talk about this. While 51% of people, of American voters, voted for Trump, 49% voted for Harris. And I think for the people at the polar ends of our political spectrum, that divide is probably going to remain pretty strong for quite a while. But a whole lot of people in the more central part of that spectrum, I think for us, this is a time when we can really exercise one of Unity's 12 powers, which is the power of understanding. There are a number of spiritual principles and powers that I think are incredibly useful in these times that we're navigating through, and I think the Unity movement and our principles are really important right now, really, really important right now. So a lot of people in this room and our online community are really hurting. I am hurting. I feel bruised, honestly, and disappointed, and I am concerned about what this is going to mean going forward. I'm concerned about what it means not only for our country, but for our already ailing planet. This week, Americans had a political choice between a message of anger and fear and othering, or a message of hope and kindness, and a majority of us chose the anger and the fear. That is a culture that we're in right now. I was so ready for a leader that set a different tone. That's not what we got. That's not what was chosen. At least not obviously what was chosen. So for those of us who may be feeling similar to what I've just expressed, it's okay and probably really healthy to grieve. But I want to, and I think a lot of us also just feel like I'm out, I'm done, I'm checked out. We can't do that. We can't do that. We do have to take care of ourselves, but this is not the time to check out. This is the time to step forward. There is already a very activated, calling itself the resistance movement. You can do the metaphysics on that if you want to. But that's already in play. That's been being planned for a long time. I've been plugging into that already numerous times this week. There's a lot going on. And our consciousness in this time also must not just put that wall between us, right? We can't allow that to happen. So no matter who you voted for in this election, I think we need to have a conversation that could cause some discomfort. I think we do need to be squarely facing the divides that are very, very real, and I'm going to share some perspective that I think might be helpful to navigate this. So I was supposed to talk about abundance. This is a stretch, but I want to say, I hope as we all are sort of assessing and processing, that we can view things through a lens of prosperity, of empathy, and abundance of understanding. That's what I think, that's the opportunity that is before us. So we're sitting here in a unity center, in a unity movement, in a country that is really divided. I'm going to talk about the divides because I think it's important to face them, but I think it might be a little different than a lot of people have been suggesting. Right now, no matter what, we need to demonstrate contrast. We need to demonstrate a different and better way of being and moving through the world. You cannot, before we can have a plan, we have to have kindness in our own hearts. You can't heal a nation by pouring more hatred onto hate, or more fear onto fear, or punching the other side, as tempting as that can be. I know, I'm speaking from the truth. I've had a challenge with othering this week, and I've been using spiritual principle to pull up out of that and to open the heart, as we talked about earlier, as Claire talked about really beautifully, actually. When love gets hard, we have to love harder. That's where we're at right now. It's going to get hard. It's going to get hard, and we have to love harder. So, let me start with the gender divide. We are a nation whose heralded founding fathers believed women should not vote, and we are a nation whose primary religion claims that God is male. Women have made a lot of progress in this culture, but we are still at a point where it appears a majority of us say any man is better as a leader than even a highly talented and qualified woman. That pisses me off. It just pisses me off. But it is where we are. It is what it is. There's more work to do. Now, that said, I don't think the gender divide was as large a factor behind what has happened than has been suggested. 89% of Black women and 60% of Latino women voted for Harris. 53% of white, non-college educated women voted for Trump. That's where we're at. There's an educational divide in this country as well, and I'm going to get to that in a second. It's worth noting that at the same time that the presidential election went this way, 7 states voted to protect a woman's right to choose her own reproductive pathway. Nobody saw that coming. So there's something else kind of at foot here. This educational divide in our country is related to an economic divide that I think is very causal, and I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. I do want to say, as someone who has been really involved in electoral politics for a large part of my life, I think the Democratic Party leadership, and I've been critical of them for many years now, they're going to have a wake-up call here, because the truth is the Democrats have gravitated toward talking with and to, quote, an educated professional class, and largely ignoring what's really going on for a whole lot of people who are struggling in this country. And I think that is a huge part of what we just experienced. I know I have MAGA supporters in my family, and I know a lot of people who view me as a college-educated Democrat who talks about highfalutin issues like climate change. They view me distrustfully and as an elite. They think we look down upon them. There's some evidence to suggest maybe there's some truth to that, right? That's an aspect of othering. So, do I believe there's an aspect of the MAGA movement that is blatantly sexist, blatantly racist, and wants white Christian nationalist values to dominate? Yes, I do. And I believe that's the group that are likely behind things like Project 2025, which we're going to be getting a little taste of probably. But I think that is the smallest percentage of all the folks who just supported Donald Trump. And I think that is important and kind of hopeful to recognize. The far bigger division, I think, are being driven by two huge problems in this nation: the media culture and the economic system. And I'm going to talk about each of these just a little bit. We're in a world where our news comes through different feeds. Our news comes through different feeds. Algorithms control what we see or don't see. And I spoke about this just a little while ago, just how siloed we are with this. It's one of the most challenging cultural developments we've got going on right now. We literally have a whole bunch of people who were given a very different view of Trump's behaviors than a lot of us were. And a whole lot of people who did not see, who were not presented a picture of Kamala Harris that we were. That should give us some opening for a little empathy and a little understanding, because we are all getting skewed information and misinformation. We all are. That is the cultural soup that we are navigating right now with the media situation that we have going on. I think understanding this may help to counter the feeling that just a whole bunch of our fellow Americans are not good people. We can't go down that path. We've got to have more understanding than that. Some of them are really functioning with the best information they've been given, as we are trying to do. So I'm writing a series of pieces right now on the system changes that we need to focus on, and I do believe this media silo culture war that's been created through it is one of the toughest nuts we have to crack as a culture in this time. In this election alone, $15 billion was spent on campaign ads. We don't currently have a federal law that requires campaign ads to be accurate. There's absolutely nothing that governs the accuracy of what gets put out on the media, or online media, which is now more influential than what you might see on television. So, huge issue. The last one I want to talk about is the economic situation. Now, the truth is, all mainstream economic indicators suggest that Biden's economy is doing great. GDP is up, unemployment's down, inflation's going down, all kinds of things. We're outperforming other industrial nations, record stock market. But those things don't necessarily translate to what people are feeling in their everyday lives. This actually gives me hope, because professionally, I have been working to move beyond GDP as a metric for decades. If that doesn't highlight that that is not really a useful form of measurement for where people are really living their lives, I don't know what does. The truth is, we have a whole lot of people who live in chronic economic stress. I know there are some in this room who do. I myself have lived there a goodly portion of my life, right? A guy's driving to work, Dave's story. A guy's driving to work and his check engine light goes off and his stress goes through the roof because he knows he doesn't have anything in savings to get a new car, but he's got to get to work to feed the kids. There's a lot of that in this country. A mom's in the checkout line, and every little beep, beep, beep of the scanner, her bill is going up until she finally has to suck up her pride, go back and start putting things back on the shelf with her kids pleading with her not to. We can learn from this. We have to be more realistic about this. Inflation has been a real deal. I now know where the cheapest gas stations are. I didn't pay attention to that before. You know, I use more coupons than I used to, and I'm relatively well off compared to many, many, many of my fellow Americans. Biden inherited a mess with COVID and the state of the economy at the time. He took extraordinary measures to try to keep it going, but that did cause inflation, and that's a real issue. That's more important to people than growing the GDP. I've done some research on this. Took me a couple of days to just wallow, and then I started researching and writing and preparing for this talk and the other stuff that I do. It turns out there's a big body of research that shows Americans hate inflation much more than they hate unemployment. It affects us more when everything we buy costs more. It's a real issue. So in this election, a lot of Americans were looking for a savior. I don't believe Trump is really going to do anything to address the lower income issues that are very problematic in this country. Tax cuts to billionaires is not going to help most of us. I do believe, however, though, that he did a little better job speaking to it, speaking to the pain that people were feeling, and we can learn from that. Now, many are concerned that we are witnessing the death of democracy. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with that. But here's a really hard truth. America hasn't been a healthy democracy for a long time. We are a corporatocracy. Now, check this out. Many of us who voted for Harris were appalled that a billionaire spent hundreds of millions of dollars to get someone elected, paid people literally $1 million apiece to get them to engage and vote a certain way. We find that appalling. It is appalling. The corporatocracy won big time with Donald Trump. For perspective, it might be useful to note, Kamala Harris was also funded by corporations and billionaires. That's how it works. That's how America is set up right now. She too supports a limitless growth, consumption-based economy. She is part of the corporatocracy as well. Many of us share my concern that a Trump administration is once again going to accelerate the damage being done to this earth that I love as much as any human being on it. That he'll roll back environmental regulations and protections like he did last time and do nothing to address climate change. That's probably going to be true, and it's going to be hard, period. But here's the deal. The Biden administration opened up more oil and gas permits than the previous Trump administration did. And on the campaign trail, Kamala Harris was saying you can address climate change and increase fracking. You can't. I talked to a lot of people, and especially a lot of younger people, and they're just ticked off because both sides of the system they know are broken. The system itself is broken, and that's a good thing. That's an opportunity, people. That's an opportunity for people who do know that thought has power, who do know that we can choose our consciousness. When cracks come up, little plants shoot through the crack in the asphalt, right? That could be us in this time. Yeah. The truth is, America's governance and electoral systems are broken, and we're hitched to a limitless growth economic system that is trying to function outside the law of physics and is incompatible with a thriving, healthy, livable planet. That's just the truth. And I think a whole lot more people are opening up to that truth, don't really know what to do about it yet, but are frustrated on all the sides of this. Now, it may be that what's being presented in this dark feeling time is an opportunity to finally get honest about all of this and to get honest about ourselves and our systems. I think the myth of America as a healthy, inclusive democracy has died now. And that's a good death, because the myth has to die in order for the idea of a genuine, functional, egalitarian democracy to come into fruition. Okay, so here's the big question. What now, right? Been doing a lot of thinking and a lot of writing on this. First, there's still over 2 months before the next administration comes in, and a lot of states and a lot of players are working really hard to put in place as many protections for people and environment as possible in that time. That's already underway in a robust way. And again, I said, a lot of organizations, environmental, civic, democracy-protecting organizations are engaged. And if you guys feel the call to plug into those, there will be ample opportunity. That's one thing we can do. I want to also share with all of you, and especially with all you fellas, a lot of us women are really hurting right now. And I'm hearing that most black women just feel gut punched. So if you get a chance to just be a little extra gentle and really show the women in your life that you value them, this is a good time to do it. This is a good time to do it. Our LGBTQ friends and families and a lot of immigrants and their spouses and families are rattled right now. This is a time to reach out to those friends and loved ones as well. Shore up a little support. Environmentalists and climate activists, we are heartsick and discouraged right now. So this might not be a bad time to thank some of them for their work, maybe even donate to their causes. Rough time on that front. And good gracious, people with loved ones in Ukraine and Gaza, if you know any of them, give them some love, right? It's very uncertain times for them. And here's what I think is really, really important too. I think it's super important that we give ourselves some love and gentleness in these times, and that we do what is helpful to us to regain, to just heal a little bit and regain some equilibrium. These are uncertain times, and peace is a choice. And there is a peace inside. We are not just bodies, right? There is a peace inside of us that politics cannot touch. There is a peace inside of us that no public figure can actually take away. We each have that power. This is the time to really, really develop our peace and resiliency muscles, to know that we have that safety, no matter how shaky it feels out here. I don't want us to spend the next few months in fear. Another one of Unity's 12 spiritual powers is imagination. I've been struggling not to use my imagination in dark ways this week. But we do often use our imagination to sort of torture ourselves, right? We can't know for sure exactly what's going to happen, and we can't know for sure that some of it's not going to be good, that there is not opportunity. We do know that in the field of possibility, there is always good that can come out of anything. I'll share with you again a term I've shared with you before that I love. It's chaord, C-H-A-O-R-D, and it means a new order rising up out of pockets of chaos. That opportunity is afoot right now for us. Whatever comes, we will rise to it, and we will rise to it with love and with compassion. That's who we are. And so until whatever comes, don't use our imagination to torture ourselves. I would encourage just to shine your light, do the self-care, be as loving as possible, demonstrate the contrast that so many of us wanted to see. That is within our power. Sort out what is yours to do, and really grow community. I've heard a lot of people too who are just like, I can't look at anybody right now. I just want to check out. That this is not the time to do that. This is the time to grow community. This community, whatever other communities you're involved with. Right now, many of us feel like a minority, some of us for the very first time. But I don't want that to cause despair, because it has always been a minority that has triggered and then built movement toward a more positive way of being. It's always been driven, first and foremost, by a minority. And I'm about to wrap. As I was preparing for this talk, which was a hard one for me, guys, I'll tell you, it wasn't until Friday morning that I really felt I could put my thoughts together enough to do this. And I tried preparing the abundance talk, and it was like, there's no way. I got to address this stuff that is so on many of our hearts and consciousness. And I remembered this Tolkien quote from Lord of the Rings. So much power from that guy. So Frodo is at a low moment, and he's facing the terrible darkness that's at play in the world, and he says, I wish it need not have happened in my time. And Gandalf responds, I'm going to get misty. And Gandalf responds, so do I, and so do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. We have to decide what is ours to do in this time that is given us. So we pull on the other spiritual power of faith. Faith is a choice. Faith is an action, right? Faith is more a verb than a noun. We maintain hope. Hope is not passive. It too is a choice, and it is a power. The sun came up today. The sun will come up tomorrow. There will be beauties aplenty in front of us, and we will get through this. Much love.